I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. But I always thought that I'd see you again.
Hello and welcome back to the Fire and Rain Conversation series. I'm Emma Ashton and I'm here with Rachel Lopes, and we're excited to share our second last episode today, and one that is very relevant for this time of year as we prepare for summer. The recent Bushfire Royal Commission International Disaster Arrangements highlights community education as one of the key recommendations. We want to know, how do we prepare as a community? We acknowledge the Ma people of the land we're speaking from today and their deep and continuous connection with the land, and we acknowledge their elders, past, present and emerging.
Hello from me, and a very warm welcome to our guest today, Jamie McKenzie. Hi, Jamie.
Hi, Rach, how are you going?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Very excited. And we have Lynn Harwood with us also. Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Jamie, you're based in Anglesea and have worked for the CFA for more than 20 years and was the driving force behind the Survive and Thrive program. We actually came across your work with the Arthurs Creek Strathewen community and the school there, and were so impressed, we asked you to come work with our kids here at the Forest Primary School. And Lynn, you're mum to our special guest in episode 3, Jack Pascoe, and a very active community member in the Mallacoota Gypsy Point region, and providing leadership to the community there post-fire and with the establishment of MADRA, the Mallacoota and District Recovery Association. And you're also a CFA volunteer for 20 years. Jamie, we'll start with you, Jamie, if that's okay.
Yep.
We had a recent experience of someone new moving to town and coming into the general store and wanting to know where the community fire plan is. It's not currently up at any venue in town. And so we're just kind of wondering, where do we start? Do we need a community fire plan, and how do we do this?
Yes, absolutely you do, but it needs to be a community plan. And I think, and it's the connection between all of the community, and of course, obviously with bushfire, the CFA will be your cornerstone starting point, I think. So we'll be directing them to the local CFA. And if we do it right, they're connected into the community. So those discussions have already happened, and that would be into that, which then links them into the community. And of course, hopefully, if we do it and engage properly, is that connection we made to other groups as well. If they've got school kids, they'll have a bit of bushfire. They'll understand. It's more than just one piece of just coming to the CFA and getting here. Where's the plan? It's how it always links to those relationships between the. I suppose that's the core of the Survive and Thrive. Is you get to the school kids and the parents. That's a part of the community, and it also ties in the local response agencies helping the kids and developing the kids, which then those discussions, and then it broadens up into involving the community in helping prepare what their response may be in the event of a fire. But it's first is hopefully the CFA, their first interactions and meeting with the CFA should be the important one and the really good starting point.
You talked about an example of the Arthurs Creek Strathewen community and their experience of Black Saturday. Can you talk a little bit about that?
What sort of started to happen was they started mobilising, and they would come down to do roles, and so all of a sudden people came to cook and other people came to do stuff, and then they started just self-organising. There's no one from the agencies came and, right, this is what we do next. They just started organising, and so it became the most amazing story that they just started fixing needs. So initially, because it was a crime scene, everything was locked down, so people couldn't get in or out. So there was people who'd survived in their houses who were stuck there. So the fire brigade was going in, what do you need? Well, we need this, that, milk, this and that. And then they'd go and get shot from it at Hurstbridge. One of the first things they did, Liesl, there were so many dead animals in stock, and she just said, we just wanted the smell of death gone. So through her contacts, she went around the loop. You know, she did the initial request that went nowhere. So she went around the loop with her networks, got onto a local ranger and who organised an earth moving guy, and they went around and destroyed the animals and buried them. Without all the fuss, they just got it done. And then, you know, they were getting people things that they needed. One of the things that came up really big, she said, of all the things was pegs, because people just wanted to wash their clothes and get rid of the smell of fire. And they had nothing to hang their clothes out. They set up at the fire station at which the shell survived at Strathewen. They set up washing machines, the Strathewen community, and they started hooking there as well. They got telecom, set up a temporary phone stuff, and then that became, they had fuel, and they started just doing stuff and cold calling. So they'd go, what do we need? And they'd just hit the phones, can you help us? We've had 8 of our brigade members have lost their homes. We're wondering if you could help us with a caravan. Oh, we've got 8 caravans from Jayco. And then we need power hooked up. So generators were organised. They were, because there was roadblocks, they actually had to meet them down side roads. So at night, you'd have these things round the back roads brought in. And I'm just going, it was just like, oh my God, they just kept, at one stage, they dressed up some people in CFA clothes and put them on the truck to take them into Hurstbridge, just doing a patrol so they could go and get what was needed. Now, I'd hate to think bureaucratically how many rules they broke, but it was just looking after their people. And they did this for 6 weeks. And one of the things is they all met, you know, the brigade members all met at the fire station, and they had meals together every night for 6 weeks. They wouldn't go home, they'd go, and then they would go home. And in the end, they did the calculations. So everything was recorded in an exercise book and with sticky notes. There was no computer programs, spreadsheets. Then the treasurer would come off the truck, take home the exercise book, put it into a thing, and then send a receipt to all the people. And then they'd write a thank you note. So they managed $750,000 worth of goods, services and donations. And as they'll proudly tell you, that they can account for every single cent, item or service. And they believe it's better than anything the Shire ever produced. And I just, you know what, but the biggest thing for me is I worked with Marysville a little bit with some of the firefighters at Marysville, where if you like, the cavalry came in pretty quickly and look, and all well-meaning, all well-meaning, but they took a lot of the impacted people out of the town to be with their families. And I remember Glenn Fisk, who's the captain at Marysville, he lost his wife and son. And I remember talking to him afterwards, and it was so distressing because he really needed to be with his community. And it was all well-meaning. He said, but I'm in Melbourne walking around and life's gone on. And I just felt like screaming, don't you understand what's happened to us? And I looked at Arthur's Creek and I thought this brigade was so tight. You know, the numbers were tight. They hadn't lost anybody. They'd been through hell. And I remember saying to the captain, I said, how have you stayed so strong? You know, like what was the answer to you've really stayed so strong? And his answer was that because we really care about each other. And it was that simple. Ended up coming to the conclusion that they were glad that they were left on their own, because as they said, we had all the skills needed in our community. You know, we had people who could, you know, do stuff. We could have people who could that. We had everybody we needed already lived here. So we just used them.
Yeah, that's so encouraging, Jamie, to think that you're on your own. You know, you do have all those resources in your own networks and your own communities. Lynn, you're not in Mallacoota itself, but a smaller town nearby called Gypsy Point. You have a local incident management plan and something you call a fire tree. Can you tell us what that is and how that came into play last summer? How important was that, and did it work?
Sure. So Gypsy Point is a very small community. I think there are about 24 households here. In summer, that can account for maybe 60 or 70 people. But yeah, we have a fire tree, which is just three columns with a person at the top of each column whose responsibility it is to work down all the names underneath them until they've managed to contact everybody that's in town. And of course, if that person is away, because we're such a small community, we tend to know that that's happening and the next person takes over. So we practice that fire tree every day of total fire ban. And I think that that is really important, so that we're an old community, aging community. So we need to keep practicing stuff so we don't forget it. So as I say, every day of total fire ban at 9 a.m, we go through that process. Hi, this is just a practice. It's a day of total fire ban. We just want to initiate the fire tree, and so it goes. And what happens is one person it nominates to take information back. And after you've been rung, the idea is that you ring back to that one person and say, Joe Blogg's here. There are 5 people in our town, in our house today. We're going to go into Mallacoota to the beach. We're taking the 2 dogs with us, and we'll be back around about 3 o'clock. Important information for Red Cross in case something terrible happens, so we know who's in town, what their intentions are, so that we can chase them up. Now, this fire tree, as I say, is practiced every time there is a day of total fire ban, but it's also looked at the start of every fire season. Is person X, who's at the top of the fire tree, going to be around for most of this season? Are they getting a bit past it? You know, should someone else take their place? So I think what's terribly important is A, that it's what the community came up with, and B, it's practiced annually. So the whole process is that, and this is what happened for the fire. We very fortunately had a couple of days to prepare. We knew that the fire was coming. So the fire tree went into action. I think the other thing that's really important about this fire tree is because it's such a small community, it's incredibly flexible. So if the fire's coming from the north, then that place which could be safe is not going to be safe. But if it comes from the west, then this beach here on the river is where we're going to go. If we've got 2 days to sit and wait, then we'll go to Y, because you know, it's comfortable, and all of us oldies, you know, can be there, sit there with our dogs, and it's fine until, you know, the last minute. And so it's a flexible plan. It's owned by the community, and it's rehearsed.
It sounds like a combination of, you know, a plan and the phone tree is a fantastic thing to help reassure, especially older people, members of the community, that give them that sense of safety in uncertain times. You're one of the locals also who were involved in the coordinating the group MADRA, which came into being after the fire. Can you explain why this group came into being and what have been the benefits of MADRA post-fire?
Jamie, it's interesting to hear you talk about that Strathewen community, because from that fire, there's another emergency volunteer called Steve Pascoe.
Yes.
And who went through the Strathewen fire in, you know, desperate situations. That's an incredible story of his. And he'd been working with me and a few other people in Mallacoota last year doing a fuel management plan. So there was a small group of us that are used to working together. And about two days after the fire front went through, Steve rang me and said, okay, you know, the next thing we need to talk about is recovery. And I helped Strathewen get through this process. I've got a few ideas. As soon as I can get in, if you can organise people to come to a meeting, we can have a look at a bit of a plan. So we did that. You know, the smoke was still in the air. Steve managed to wangle his way in on a plane because the roads were shut. And we called together all of those, every organisation in town that we could think of. So, you know, the gardening club, the walking club, the sports clubs, the business association. We asked them to send their presidents. So already people that had been elected by town members and were respected. And I think we had about 60 people turn up to that meeting. And basically Steve addressed the meeting and said, look, in Strathewen, what we did that worked was we set up an incorporated body. And the reason that we did that was, A, money is then absolutely accountable. So everybody knows, you know, what's come in and what's gone out. But B, what tends to happen immediately after an emergency is that the agencies come in, they talk to this group or they talk to that little group, and that little group might say, oh, look, what we really need in Mallacoota is a helipad. And, you know, there's big money comes in. So, oh, righto, we'll build a helipad, but really only 10 people in the community want a helipad, and everybody else is really annoyed. What do we need a helipad in the middle of town for? You know, if we got that sort of money, what we should be doing is building a new, I don't know, kindergarten or whatever. So the idea is that if you get the whole community together, then those issues are properly sorted out by elected members of the community who actually represent the whole community. And it's not this kind of ad hoc, bit here, bit there sort of thing. So we put that suggestion to the community, and it was like, oh, thank God, you know, that sounds fabulous. Just get on with it, and we'll get on with the process of cleaning up our town. So we did that. We came up with a bit of a constitution. We had a small group, which we called the Thinking Group. Creative name. We set up some purposes. We set up the notion of elections, so that there was a board. We set up the actual association and the rules of the association, and a few weeks later, when we'd gone through that, we held a huge public meeting. Hundreds of people came, and we said, this is what we're suggesting, that we set up this association, people join the association for free. Those people then elect a committee which is representative of the town, so that what we decide upon is actually what the whole town wants. You know, by the time that meeting had disbanded, we already had a couple of hundred people had joined it, which is pretty extraordinary. And out of a town of 1,000, in the end, we had over 800 people become part of that association. Before we actually elected the committee, we had lots of meetings with community members, those who were interested in becoming members of the committee, and said, it's really important that what you put yourself up for is not to represent your organisation or your political party or, you know, the business or whatever. Your job is to represent the whole community. And that put some people off, but actually engaged some people. It took us a long time to set this whole process up, and the elections went through VEC, the Victorian Electoral Committee, so no one could say, you know, it was set up. Like Mr. Trump didn't take us forward. And so in May we had that committee, and they're doing a fantastic job. But look, if you had sat down and worked out how to get a completely representative community, you couldn't have done better. So we've got some people who are only 20, some people who are 80. We've got equal men and women, and we've got the whole range of political persuasion within Mallacoota. So it's fabulous, and they're working together really well. I reckon it's been a ripper.
Mm. Wow, it sounds amazing, Lynn.
Yes.
Well done on that amazing work. What a great example to other communities, and the way that unfolded without a plan as well. What the community brought together and made happen is fantastic.
I
Well
think
done.
it's working off other people's experience. Like,
Mm.
we've come a long way, Jamie, since Strathewen.
Yes.
And so straight after our experience, we had agencies in here. We didn't have to work from scratch. We had the Red Cross, we had the Army, we had the Navy. We had an amazing amount of support, but we still needed the community to lead the conversation.
Mm. Thanks, Lynn. Jamie, based on your experiences, what would be your top 3 tips for communities in bushfire-prone areas to consider or do before pre-fire, preparing for
One
fire?
is learn about fire. Is the old knowledge dispels fear. We've done really well of scaring everybody about bushfires. Everyone just sort of equates a fire to a Black Saturday, where there's so if we want people to actually have good plans, it's got to be based on good information and where the fire is, rates of spread, the fire danger rating, actually drilling down a bit more what that actually means, what those numbers actually mean, is probably the first thing. Is if I could teach anything, I'd have all the community members understanding the forest fire danger meter and what it means, and rates of spread, and what fire is about. That would be big. The other is the connection, and have the agencies take the lead from communities, and be guided. I know agencies think they're the font of all, and I've been involved. I've been an agency person my whole life, and it's a bit of a change for shires. They can be really well-meaning, but it needs to be what the community needs to lead. There's sort of 2 components I see. You have your response component, where your local brigades are, particularly for the first couple of hours of any disaster. It's always going to come down to the actions of your local responders and your local community will have the greatest impact going forward. So if we can, while the agencies are dealing with the fire, if the community's setting up the town and getting things in place, that when all the support agencies come, they actually connect into the community, not the other way around. And so, for instance, the cavalry arrives. Okay, what do we need? You'll need to go and talk to Julie down the street there, because she's got all the information regarding about that. She'll fill you in and brief you on that. So it needs to flip the narrative a little bit. That would be the second, is get that community. And I think part of that's actually, and again, it comes to the first point, is giving them the confidence they've actually got the skills to do a lot of the stuff that's required. But they think, as a great example we use, we went around the room, what did everyone do in their current job or their past jobs? What's their, you've got nurses, you've got all sorts, you've got people who run logistics companies, you've got people that can organise, and then we sort of say, well, who else do you need? Like, really, who else do you need to deal with? And I think once they get that confidence, well, we can do this. And then the next step is, and I think, and Lynn's exactly right, and you need to practice it. Otherwise, it drops off really quick. So knowledge first, that connection bit next, and where it fits and what you actually can do, and then the practicing.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jamie. Lynn, what would be based on your experiences, your top 3 tips for communities?
Well, I think I'd just support what Jamie says. Absolutely. You need the knowledge. I mean, Mallacoota is still traumatised, and we have people at both ends of the spectrum when it comes to be preparing for fire. Some people saying we need to bulldoze a 3-kilometre circle around the town, and other people saying the bush has been so harmed, let's leave it alone, do the very least we can. So somewhere in the middle is where we have to go. but you can only have those conversations when people have the knowledge to add to those conversations. So yes, knowledge. The second thing is, I think I'm just repeating what Jamie said, really. You've got to presume that you have the knowledge then to help the agencies actually do stuff. So we've thought about this edge of town. This is important to us, not just fire, but biodiversity, traditional and cultural knowledge, the amenity. This is our knowledge, and this is important to our community. So this is what we want, how we want the agencies to support us in this. And I think the third thing is people need to take responsibility. And through knowledge and power comes responsibility. So I can't just keep on talking about what's happening out in the bush without looking to my own backyard and being as prepared as I personally can be to make my house not the one that A, puts firefighters' lives in risks because they're coming to help me, but B, doesn't start a conflagration that goes right down the street. So, yeah.
Thank you, Lynn and Jamie. And our next question is about reimagining the future. And I feel like we've already talked a lot about some of these with your examples. But if you could just briefly summarise what things would look like if it was working really well: community-led planning, community-led knowledge sharing, gathering and sharing. Jamie, I'll start with you. Can you describe what this would look like?
I'll describe it through the lens of an incident, and I'll frame it up with Anglesey because of some of the issues you're dealing with 20-something thousand people in town, one road in and out, most of them 18,000 plus of them visitors who don't know much. And in the future, I would imagine that our response agencies are responding to the fire, and if we actually have no chance of getting out, our community have all fallen into, if you like, their role and are setting up to actually keep visitors calm and informed and looking after their welfare needs, that they're actually doing things instead of just being they're actually helping to do that, which is again for help for recovery. So when all the thing comes, the agencies then work for our community members on the direction of going forward, what needs to happen now. They can take over, but our community members are saying, when this is what we need to do, no, that's how we've got that. Don't go thinking what you... So they plug into the community when they get there. That would be... And the big other thing would probably... And the kids have got to be involved. The kids are such an important part of being involved in the local community response. They to have jobs, to play roles, and they can.
Yeah, thank you. We talked with some educators in our previous episode, and it's particularly important, I think. Lynn, can you also describe a reimagined future? If things are working really well, community-led recovery, ultimately community resilience, what would that look like to you?
I think, in many ways, this is a political question. I would hope that our leaders actually embrace the notion of climate change, do something about it, so that we are not facing emergency situations, the like of which we've had in the last few years, and which will, continue to worsen hugely. This year we had more fires that resulted in those amazing pyrocumulus clouds than we had in all the 10 years previous to that. And that is climate change. Our country is drying, is heating, and we are having these days of extreme danger. So I would say that what I hope for the future is that government actually does something really sensible about climate change, and that they spend money on preparation and not having to spend money on the aftermath of a disaster.
Thanks, Lynn. Great answer. I agree, 100%. We finish off, our last question is around hope. And Lynn, following on from your answer there, what gives you hope personally?
Well, can I say Joe Biden being elected as the president?
Yes. Yeah.
But also, you know, also my children and my grandchildren. You know, I see how my children are engaged intelligently in the world, and so are their children. And you know, that makes me say, well, we've got to keep on doing the very best we can, and they are living that, and that gives me enormous hope. Beautiful.
Thanks, Lynn. And Jamie, what gives you hope?
I think it's the same. I actually think it's exactly the same. Biden's it's a great result. It's the kids and their involvement in community, you know, and I think through some of these is that they have to be the future. We have to look at generational change, and I think and let the kids do things and make mistakes. That's what. But the kids give me great hope. The things I've seen, yeah, they're in good hands, and they are. It is, despite what they all say, they're a really good generation coming through. I reckon these kids, really good.
Great. I agree. I've got some of those. They're pretty ace. We'll finish there. And thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yep.
And thank you to both. Much appreciated.
Thanks for joining us today, and stay tuned for our final episode, which will be a wrap-up of the series, including snippets from special guests and the Forest Community Day as we prepare for the season ahead. Thank you.
But I always thought that I'd see you again.